Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
I know it's another exciting week. We had a lot of stuff happen this week, and a lot of good things that are happening. So last week we had on Aaron Packard. He was running for state committee man in the Middlesex Worcester district, and let's see what happened. How about that?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I would like to conclude this, and we have a winner. The results of the vote were Packard 50, Shepherd 33, and we have one blank. Therefore, Aaron Packard is the winner today.
Let's get
I
that.
am very humble. I tend to get a little passionate in things like this, so thank you all. Your support means a lot, because like I said, one man is not an island, it takes the family. The one word that's been used quite a lot the past month, the past couple of years, is the word unity. I like to think of as family building cohesion, and that's what we are. We are a family. This is our backyard, and we need to protect it, stand together, and grow together. So I do thank you.
All right, we'll pause it there. I know you have some things to say about it. You were there, actually, weren't you?
Yeah, and I like the clip. I like how you pulled the one with the Mayflower Media logo. So that was great. And I should add, if you're watching this on Mayflower Media channel, we're uploading this in two places for the time being. But in the future, we have set up another channel called the Thurbercast, and we'll provide a link in the description below. But you'll want to sign up there, because in the future, eventually, we're just going to post videos under the Thurbercast channel. So make sure to check that out and subscribe there. But yeah, it was a great caucus. I'll go give a little background from start to end. So we pretty much Saturday morning woke up, was pretty excited about it. It was a little bit rainy on Saturday, if you remember. It was in the Lancaster Community Center, so drove up there. There wasn't really a lot of signage or anything. I figured there'd be a lot of people standing out, but it was pretty low key, I think, because the rain kind of held a lot of people back. But yeah, it was good. We got there. There was a good amount of people there. So you heard the ending vote tally was 50 to 33. So there was 83 people that voted, and there was one blank. So really 84. And there was probably about another 20 or so room. There was over 100 people in that room.
Now, Jim, can I cut you off for a second? I apologize. For the people out there that don't know, maybe not have watched our last show, the people that were able to vote were RTC members, registered RTC members, so Republican Town Committee members.
That's exactly right. So anyone in that Senate district that's a member of the RTC would have been allowed to vote in that in the caucus. So what happened was there's two state committee people per Senate district, and one of them had stepped aside, retired or resigned or for whatever reason. So this one was vacant. So this caucus was to fill that state committee seat. And yeah, so there was originally going to be two rooms booked for that event, but one of them, I think, didn't work out. So everyone kind of got put into one room at the Lancaster Community Center. So it was a pretty packed room, but it was a lot of energy in there. And went pretty smooth for the most part. There was one little hiccup, I would say, right as the voting counted. So the only issue that popped up was that when everyone was checked in to receive a ballot that was a voting member, they gave their name on the registration. But then what happened was when the voting actually went to go take place, nobody was checking off who was actually voting. So everyone just wanted to make sure one person was voting one time. Nobody was handed any extra ballots or anything like that, so that the voting members, even though it's a secret ballot, they just wanted to make sure as you were stepping up to put your ballot in the box that your name was being checked off, that you had already voted in this election. So that was the only hiccup. So someone brought the original roster to the box so that we were able to check people off as the vote was being conducted.
So that's one thing I think we discussed last week when we were discussing the caucuses, and the issue we had with how the other caucus was run, where it was a voice vote and it should have been a secret ballot. And the date was changed, not in the appropriate amount of time with the appropriate amount of notification. Even though there's hiccups, and there's going to be hiccups, okay? And again, I'm not saying this because the guy we had on our show won. I think anyone that was there would realize that it was trying to be all above board, right? And again, we put this picture up right over here to show there's the ballots. That what was supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to be all in favor or all who want this person say aye, all who doesn't say no. That's an RTC meeting thing. When you're having an RTC meeting and you're doing stuff, that's how you do it. Caucuses, there's bylaws. They have to be done a different way. And it was funny because you would text me like, oh, this is going on, this is going on. I'm like, oh, please don't, because again, we want to show that we do things right. We want people to know that we believe in doing things right, and we're going to follow the law as Republicans, because that's how unenrolled people are going to look at us like, hey, listen, there were some issues. They resolved the issues. Everyone was happy with how they resolved the issues. Great. Not like, hey, there was issues. They brushed it under the rug. So what? We needed to do it. Hey, it was funny. I was thinking about that caucus, right? And what you said about needing the 15 days. And, a lot of people are like, yeah, so what? So what if they change the address and it wasn't in 15 days, right? Because we just wanted to get it done because it was 2 years. But my response to that would have been, well, it was 2 years without him. What was another week to do it right? So I hope we go down that route. I believe in the next week or two, we're going to have Aaron back on just so he can tell us about his experience, what his plans are going forward, and, how he's going to bring that unity that you and I keep talking about to the Republican Party. Any last words on this?
Yeah, no, good point. And yeah, I just mentioned that that's exactly right with the ballot, and that's exactly how it's defined in the bylaws. And the bylaws aren't some 1,000-page booklet. I mean, we're talking about a bylaw that's probably about a paragraph on a piece of paper. So these aren't very robust bylaws. So the ones that are in place, it is important that they get followed. And
Correct.
like you said, it's like in the RTC. The RTCs typically go by what's called Robert's rules, and if there's no opposition, then you can potentially have that type of vote. But for the caucuses, the bylaws specifically state the way that they're supposed to run and the procedures for them, and that was the issue with the first Suffolk caucus, is that they did not follow the bylaws in a number of different ways. So it just, like you said, it's like we want to make sure that we're doing everything on the level here.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That was the only issue there.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for going and getting those videos and, keeping us abreast of what is going on. Another thing you and I have been talking about for this past week, and I find it very interesting, and I will give anyone credit when they're doing what I believe is the right thing, and I think you believe is the right thing. There's a big story, in Massachusetts about the state auditor, Diana DiZoglio, and she wants to run an audit on the state legislature, and there's a lot of pushback. So in the issue of transparency for everyone watching, I'm going to play a video clip. On the video clip, I took 3 separate clips from the TV show I got them from, and I edited them around just to make it easier to understand what the situation is. We're going to include the original links to the videos in the comments below, so you can watch them without me cutting them up, just to make sure, oh, Justin's just trying to get a certain type of narrative going. That's not what it is. I think the way I spliced it and put it together will hopefully give people a more concise, a clear understanding of what's going on. And if you do have issues, or you do have questions, or you do want to comment on how I made that video, yeah, please feel free to reach out, because again, I think Jimmy and Jimmy would agree, we want to have a show that's trying to be as honest and factual with the information we have all the time. So if anyone ever thinks that, hey, listen, you're misrepresenting this, you're trying to hide facts, you're obfuscating things, listen, reach out to us. If you have comments, comment, we'll answer them. I'll even have you on the show and have a discussion. I don't claim to know everything. Jimmy doesn't claim to know everything, do you?
Absolutely.
All right, good. So, but again, what we're trying to do is, based on the information we have, present what we believe and give our opinions based on it. So let me get this video going. We'll probably stop it a couple times after you listen to it. Jimmy and I will discuss it. And here we go.
Deals behind closed doors on how tax dollars are spent, what bills are passed, who's leading committees, even who's getting the best office assignments on Beacon Hill. Lawmakers on Beacon Hill aren't subject to the public records law. Much of the business is done behind closed doors. Well, today, Auditor Diana DiZoglio sent this letter to the House Speaker and the Senate President, putting them on notice she wants to audit the legislature for what she believes will be the first time in 100 years. As state auditor, she explained in our one-on-one interview why she has sent this letter to the House Speaker and Senate President, telling them she intends to audit the Massachusetts legislature.
Being in the legislature for 10 years really gave me the opportunity to see the dire need that we here in the state of Massachusetts do have regarding the need for increased transparency, accountability, and equity, not just outside of Beacon Hill, but right here on Beacon Hill.
What could you audit with the legislature?
We can look at transparency, accountability, and equity as it pertains to procurement, as it pertains to the budget, as it pertains to committee assignments, so on and so forth. And we do plan on taking a deep dive.
The auditor's office, the state watchdog, regularly audits more than 200 state agencies, but hasn't touched the legislature in decades.
There's nothing in the statute that prohibits us from auditing the legislature.
If there's resistance, are you prepared for a court fight?
If there is resistance, we would have that conversation.
All right. So really quick for people who don't understand what's going on. Basically, they believe in probably about 100 years was the last time an audit was done. Now, there was some new information that came out today. So on next week's show, we're going to have more of that information, but we'll base our discussion on what we know right now. The last time an audit was done on a state legislature was 100 years ago. Now, this is something that I don't want to say affects me personally, but kind of does, because when I was running for office, and you try finding like opposition research on your opponent, so I started to look at her voting record, and I realized that the legislature voted on a lot of bills to reduce transparency. If you're a representative, you should be representing your people, and if you're doing the right things, I don't think you should have anything to hide. So what do you think so far, Jim?
Yeah, and I love. It's funny how you ended it on the Senate President picture there, Karen Spilka, because I mean this is exactly the issue. It's like Massachusetts has become more of a one-party state, and I think it's emboldened Democrats to get away with a lot more than they typically would if there was a bipartisanship in the legislature. So earlier this year, we saw the Senate vote to give Karen Spilka essentially unlimited term limits. The Senate President had term limits. The Senate, which is majority Democrats, voted to get rid of term limits for the Senate leadership. So it's Democrats over the last few years have become more emboldened given the one party control, and this is interesting because this is like she's coming in and she's at least giving the perception of, hey, we're gonna investigate ourselves. Whether that actually accumulates to anything is left to be determined.
Sure. So before you go on, it was funny how you say like emboldened or whatever, because in the next minute or two of this video, it'd be interesting thing for people to watch what their representative, their elective officials believe about their positions. And as a chief in the military, you see a lot of people who, when they get power, sometimes it goes to the head and they don't know how to use it, or they use it in a way like, I am a leader, I lead you, you are too dumb to know what's going on, so I need to do everything. And we need to change that dynamic, right? A representative is called a representative. You're supposed to represent your people. You're not supposed to sit there and be like, I'm a leader, I'm going to tell you what the hell to do, don't worry about me, I worry about you, the rules are for you, the rules aren't for me. And getting back to your point too, you and I, when we discuss this, really hope that the auditor is doing it for good reason. We hope they're doing it to show the transparency. I'm hoping that when she was in the state Senate and she was in the state as a state rep, she saw some things and she's like, I need to fix it. That's what we need. Like, we could agree on everything else. Disagree on everything else. But if she's going to do this, I'd back her. I'd back her all day.
the Senate leadership does seem pretty upset that she's moving forward with this. So
Oh, wait.
given the way that it's played out, it's like it sounds like there could be some legitimacy behind that. So I'm interested to see what the end result is. Like, is this actually gonna accumulate? Is this gonna actually produce something tangible that's gonna open our eyes, or we're gonna find some things there that are really gonna wow some people?
All right, I hope so. So let's play the next part where hearing from the leadership at the State House.
Response, the Senate president issued a statement saying, in part, Senate business is made public through journals, calendars, and recordings of each session, while payroll and other financial information is publicly available on the comptroller's website.
I just have to pause right here really quick. Knowing a lot of people in politics, trying to get involved in politics, this stuff might be out there, but most people aren't going to know where to find this. And that's a sad fact. And again, even if they are able to find this, figuring out what it means and how it affects them is different. And again, that's why I think this audit is probably needed, because they would take it and say, here's what we found. This is what it means to you. So let's listen a little longer.
And she pointed to an outside audit the Senate conducts every year. The most recent one available from 2020 is 6 pages long and is limited to finances.
So one other thing, I looked these things up. This is from Clifton Larson Allen. It's a 6-page audit. As they'll tell you, it's just about some numbers and some money. I have looked for the previous year's versions of this. They're all 6 pages long. They all basically say the same thing, and it's a whole bunch of nothing. So obviously, if you want to have the perception that you're doing an audit and you're doing the right things and everything's above board, oh, I did an audit. It's 6 pages. What's that 6 pages tell you? Well, the first 2 pages are like, this is how we did it, and this is why we did it. And then a couple things like, oh, this is how we looked. And then here's some numbers, and it means absolutely nothing. So that's why I'm for this audit. Let me just finish this out and let you talk, Jim.
Available funds and expenditures. State Auditor Diana DiZoglio responded to Senate President Spilka's statement, saying, in part, I hope legislative leaders will respect the taxpayers by cooperating with our office just as every other state entity does. No branch of our government, including the legislature, ought to be above the law.
Speaker Ron Mariano exclusively on OTR explaining why he's rejecting the state auditor's push to audit the House.
We've decided that she really doesn't have the authority that she's claiming in the letter that she sent us.
Just overstepping her authority here.
I believe so.
Why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
She won a statewide election, worked very hard, and thinks it uber powerful that she can audit anything.
Uber powerful.
Yeah.
Auditor DiZoglio telling us, I find it disappointing the speaker is fighting an audit of what's happening in the people's house, where the people's business is conducted using the people's money. We are not asking for permission and will continue conducting our audit as planned to help increase transparency, accountability, and equity for everyday families. She maintains the legislature was last audited by her office more than 100 years ago, but the House lawyer questions that, writing, we have no records of the Office of the State Auditor ever auditing the House of Representatives.
The most recent record we found was this audit of the Legislative Department from 1922. At that time, it included payments from the Senate President's compensation of $3,000 to traveling expenses, including cigars.
The auditor's office, as it's designed today, didn't exist that way.
Speaker Mariano says he's not ducking audits, adding one is done every year by an outside firm.
Do you think the law should be changed to allow?
No.
Why not?
No, because we operate independently, and we're judged on what we do. I don't need someone with a political agenda who's in the executive branch passing judgment on me.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Don't judge me politically. It's all politics, but don't judge me politically. I mean, I don't even know if they're aware of what they're saying. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, as we've covered, I mean, just based on what we've seen and some of the, I mean, we've been pretty new to a lot of this stuff, and just the poking around that we've done to in different campaigns and their financial reports. I mean, there's clearly enough out there of shady stuff going on that if you wanted to poke into it, I mean, you have groups setting up LLCs and transferring money over, and there's clearly enough that gets swept under the rug. So if you really wanted to dig into that. There's enough there. I think the bigger question at this point is like, why is this being done? So it sounds like there's a potential backstory with DeZoglio and going after the legislature that I'm not, super familiar with.
Sure.
But either that or it's just to create a perception that they're actually doing something. So I think it's one of those two. As it develops, we'll find out a little bit more.
Now, I'm a pretty even keel guy, you know that, right? And he says something that's kind of true. And this is where I'm going to look into the camera, and it's incumbent upon us, right? Because what he's basically saying is people elect us. They keep electing us over and over, so we're just going to keep doing what we do. That's what has to change. Legit, that's what has to change. When are people going to realize that the people in power, if you keep putting them in power and they can do whatever they want, and this is how they treat you, are going to do whatever they want?
When was the that paper that they pulled up? It was like they must have had to go through they call it like the fiche paper. It's like this is like before computers were invented. They put everything on like fiche paper. You need like a microscope to find everything. That's what it looked like was when they pulled this last audit report.
And the best thing about it too, the ending just killed me of this guy. And again, listen, I don't need this to be political. The whole thing is political. At the beginning of the thing, they tell you who gets the conferences, who gets the offices, who gets to be on the committees, right? How do you think that's done? It's all political. But don't come here and tell me how to do my politics. I'm not telling you how to do your politics. What we're telling you is do the politics right. But the other problem is, like you said, it being almost a one-party state, they feel like they have carte blanche to do whatever they want. And I think what more and more people should do is, whether they like Republicans or not, or independents now, I'm not even telling you vote Republicans, vote Green Party, vote Libertarian. I don't care. But we have to start telling these people is we'll kick your butt out if you aren't working for us like you're supposed to. That's the dynamic that has to change, right? And I hope this audit goes through, because whether there's something on it or there's nothing on it, having that over their head all the time, like, hey, listen, people are watching you, and you better do the right thing because you're elected to do the right thing. I like that. It's sad we have to be that way, right? Like you would hope that you could vote for a person and they go, I'm going up there to do my job for you. But they're like, I'm going up there and whatever they tell me to do, I'm going to do because I want to get on a committee. So I just need people to think. We need people to start looking at this whole situation differently, and we need to hold our elected officials to account. So what do you got to say, Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I think the audit's a good thing to happen as well. I hope it moves forward. And I mean, if it is legitimate, if they actually do pursue it and are trying to create transparency and good faith, and I not only is that good, but I mean, I'm sure DeZoglio is looking at it as well. And I mean, I think it's potentially a good move for her political career as well, because it is widely popular for people to make things more transparent. And this isn't the first time that it's been done. Other politicians have done this in other states, and it's worked out well for them. So like Nikki Haley, for example, this was one of the big issues. She was in the state legislature before she ran for governor, and one of the big issues that she ran on, I think it was called like the Sunshine Act or the Sunshine Laws, where it was making the vote counts or the
committee counts.
Yeah, making them transparent and publicly available, because a lot of that stuff was hidden and behind closed doors, and she really campaigned on that, and that was one of the big things that she ran on that led to her becoming governor. So this has worked out for politicians in the past, so I think it could be a win for the people, and for good or for better or for worse, it could be a win for DeZoglio's campaign as well.
So let's finish this up with someone that has some common sense from a nonprofit organization. So we'll see what they say.
But those fighting to make state government more transparent made their reaction clear.
Thrilled. This audit is welcome and really timely.
And long overdue, according to Act on Mass Executive Director Erin Leahy. Especially, she says, with the Massachusetts Senate recently voting to remove term limits for its president, and the House continuing to keep all committee votes out of public view.
The truth of the matter is only a few people in the State House are deciding which bills will pass and which bills will not pass. When just a few people have all the power of...
Okay. Only a few people are making that decision. That's not how this is supposed to work, right? Let's just finish this out for a second.
Of what passes and what doesn't pass, that disempowers the rest of us. And that should trouble everyone that cares about democracy.
100%. If you care about democracy, if you care about the process working, then you want this audit. And you probably want to audit every year. And you probably want a really good independent audit that isn't getting bribed, they're, transparent and people know what's going on. They want to know when you're spending over $600 on PayPal or Venmo, but they're spending multi-billion dollars and they're like, you have no right to see how we're spending your money.
Yeah, exactly. This is where those 87,000 IRS agents come into play. We talk about this. There's not that many billionaires in the United States, so clearly they're not just going after billionaires. They're going to have to be going after regular citizens if they're going to be hiring that many IRS agents.
Sure.
But you brought up another good point too, because we've talked about this before. If you go to the state website and you can actually go see all the bills that have been proposed.
Correct.
And we've poked at some of these bills and they're like absolutely absurd. It's like any new building needs to have solar panels, or like every autonomous car has to be electric. Like they're proposing some pretty radical bills.
Yes.
And some of them, it's like you don't get to see who's necessarily if they do go to a vote, who's voting on them. So it's like I want to learn more about who's voting in favor or against these bills, because I want to.
Yeah. Let me show you a couple other things. I put up a slideshow for people, and for people that might listen to this in their cars or on a podcast, I'm going to pull up a slideshow and just a couple pictures and a couple things for an explanation. So first one is I have a picture of the 1922 audit book that they had. So they've been done in the past. Like I said, stay tuned next week. We're going to watch next week's show because we have breaking news that there's actually been more audits they found, but we'll get that information for you next week. Then what we have is we'll even show you some pictures inside of the book just to show you what they spent money on, right? Spend it on cigars, how much the speakers were paid, how much representatives were paid. But here's one of the big reasons why I wanted to do this story. A, I want an audit, and B, like I said earlier, when I was running a race, okay, one of the topics I brought up was my opponent voted against transparency in government every chance she had. Now, on election day, she yelled at all my people from what they told me, saying those are all lies. But what I present to everybody right here is from Mass Fiscal, which is a conservative website that tracks the voting of representatives in Massachusetts, and also Progressive Massachusetts, which is a progressive website. It's called Progressive Mass Scorecard. What I did is I found the bills from last year's 192nd General Council that were either downvoted or upvoted, and these were to allow transparency in government. And very rarely, if you look up both these websites, Progressive Mass Scorecard and Mass Fiscal, will they agree on a stance? Okay, so if you see the top right-hand corner says Mass Fiscal stance, a check, that means yes, they wanted you to have a yes. And Progressive position at the bottom says yes, they wanted them to say yes. Well, my opponent voted no, as well as the rest of the legislature. And on this particular vote, it was on publishing full committee votes online, as opposed to publishing only no votes and tallies for all House committees so that their constituents can see how their representatives are voting. Committees decided whether the bill advances to the floor. So my representative voted no to transparency. So we'll go to the next one. This one was for a review period for bills. This vote was requiring bills to be released 48 hours before a vote so that representatives and the public have had time to read the legislation. So the conservative website that tracks these things said yes. The progressive said yes, that's a great idea. My opponent and the legislature said No. Right? So we see some sort of little trend going on here. And finally, public committee votes and testimony. This was a vote on reforming the joint House Senate rules to publish full committee votes online, as opposed to publishing only no votes and tallies, and making the committee testimony available as public record in order to make the legislative process more accessible to the public. So they want to make it more accessible to the public. That's what the bill was. The mask fiscal conservative people said, yes, we should do that. The progressives said, yes, we should do that. Your representative said, wah, wah, no. And then we're going to have an audit. And what do they say? No. So go ahead. I just want to say one thing as I do this, and then I'll let you talk. I hope people are starting to realize, like, the things we bring up is our system is broken right now. We have elected people to represent us, and they're not doing it. They're representing either themselves, special interest, or the party. And nothing is going to change until we make them change. They're actively sitting here saying, we don't want you to see what we're doing. We don't care if you see what we're doing. Maybe you're too dumb, they think. Maybe they don't care about what you think. But I think it's time to really start holding them to account. I think people should take a more active participation in the government. Watch this show. We're going to be putting up bills. We're going to be talking about a bill in a second that could be going through a committee and to hopefully not be voted on. But we need to be more active. We need to pay attention. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, and boy, they don't like it. What do you say, Jim?
It's the Nancy Pelosi rule. You have to pass the bill before you find out what's in it.
Yeah.
Is that a famous? What was that? Was that the Affordable Health Care Act? Was there a famous quote?
This is actually worse. This is actually worse because they don't want you to see what's in it. This is, we're going to pass the bill and screw you. You're not going to see what's in it.
Yeah.
Don't audit us.
I love in that book. So they were going through, what was it, 1922, and they were looking at all the expenses. They found cigars. But I'm like, in my head, I'm like, times have changed a lot since 1922. Not a lot of politicians, definitely not a lot of Democrat politicians smoke cigars these days. So no. I'm wondering if this audit, I was gonna say, as this audit comes up, I'm like, I wonder what we should do a poll question. What sort of expenses are we gonna see come out of this audit? Is it gonna be vape pens? Is it gonna be something else? Your opponent was buying paddles for her campaign. So
I know.
Who knows?
I know. So, like I said to everyone, watch our show next week. There was some breaking news that came out today. We didn't have time to get everything uploaded in the new videos. And it's a developing story, and it's something I think we're going to follow because I think everyone should agree that there should be more transparency. There should probably be pressure on our representatives to put pressure on the people in the State House to say, let this go through. And let's just see where the chips may fall. The next thing I think we're going to talk about is, as I kind of mentioned earlier, you and I, we go through and look at what bills are being proposed on the House. And I saw one that it just blew my mind because we just got to $15 an hour minimum wage this year. And there's already a call to move that to $20 an hour by 2027. So what they want to do, it's Bill H1925. And what it wants to do is over the next 4 years is raise the minimum wage $1.25 each year to bring us up to $20 by 2027. What do you think about this, Jim?
Well, I mean, it's pandering at its finest, and I just think it's funny too because here we are, and we've had the supply chain price hikes for the last few years, so the CPI has been high, but inflation peaked of June in 2022. Since then, we've actually started to see deflation, and we're heading into a monster. Or you look at the economic data across the board, and a lot of indicators have people heading towards a recession or preparing for a recession later on this year. And you're going to tell businesses, in addition to like mom and pops, that in addition to potentially seeing your revenues decline, we're going to jack up your cost as well. I mean, this is, if their business wasn't in trouble already, this is going to be the death sentence for mom and pops across the state.
Yeah. So if you could give me a minute, because for years I had this idea in my head, and I tell it to anyone who will listen. So a lot of people out in YouTube land or wherever they're gonna watch this video on the podcast, listen to it. They never got to hear my little spiel on, these minimum wage increases and how they really work. So if you just give me a minute or two, I just want to go into something to just tell a nice little story, if you don't mind. You good? All right. So here's the way I look at it: is years ago, politicians, if they said, "Hey, listen, I want to give you a tax increase," and if they were in office, they'd be voted out of office. Everyone remembers George W. Bush. No new taxes, read my lips, right? Well, he raised taxes. He lasted one term and got voted out. So politicians are smart, right? They want to stay in office. That's their main driver, staying in office, staying in power. So what they do is they sat there and they said, well, listen, how can we get the projects done that we want to get done and not raise taxes or have the perception that taxes are being raised? So someone was pretty smart, thought about this, said, hey, listen, if people make more money, we get more taxes. And then I think some light bulb went off in someone's head and they're like, oh, let's increase the minimum wage. Because if we increase the minimum wage, what people will do is they'll be happy and vote for us because it's more money in their pocket. And then, you know what? We tax them more, so we get more money. And we're never the bad guy, right? But in every story, you need a villain, right? In every story, you need the bad guy. So what politicians did is they're smart. They said, hey, we need a bad guy. Well, who's the bad guy? The bad guy is the business. The bad guy is the employer, right? And they sit there and they tell these people, listen, your employer's the bad guy. Your employer's not paying you a living wage, right? That's it. That's a good term. Your employer's not paying you a living wage. They need to pay you more. Don't you understand life is expensive? They need to pay you more. And on the flip side, the government gets more money, but don't think about all the inflation and the added cost of things that's going to happen because they have to raise the price of everything. And there's one other piece of this that people forget, and this is a trick. And this is why I like this show, Jim, and this is why I'm glad you and I are doing it, is what we're trying to do is look at topics that people talk circles around for years and bring a different angle, a different view on it. So think about this. As they sit there, politicians, and tell you that your employer is bad, they're underpaying you, right? They're distracting you from all the taxes that they take from you. So I just have a little list I want to read, right? So you're taxed on your income. Okay. And then after you get that tax from your check, you're taxed on purchases. You're taxed when you buy a vehicle. Then you're taxed yearly on your excise for that vehicle. Then you're taxed on the gas. Then you're taxed on the house purchase. And then you have a water fee, a sewer fee, a community preservation fee. You're taxed on your electric for the house. You're taxed on the gas for your house. You have a tax or a fee for trash and bags. You have an estate tax, a food tax, a purchase on computers, on appliances, on everything but clothing in Massachusetts. You're taxed on cell phones. You're taxed on internet and cable. You're taxed on your investments. You're taxed on savings. If you want to go on vacation, you're taxed on airfare, hotels. You have a driver's license fee, a registration fee, an inspection fee, a liquor tax, a recreational vehicle tax, toll booth fees. Because, hey, listen, even though we tax you on your gas to pay for the roads, we need some extra money. And that's my thing. I did some research on this. There's over 97 taxes that people can pay in America. But the trick is, and it's what they do so well and what we really need people to start looking into. The trick is they convince you they're the ones saving you, and these people are your enemy. And these people aren't your enemy. These people are trying to survive because those businesses that they demonize are also getting taxed. And trust me, I've worked at a bunch of companies, and when I was out, oh, it was great. When I was out running for office, I ran to a bunch of businesses. And they would sit there and tell you every time they raise the minimum wage or they raise some fee that's going to help everyone out. He's like, the only thing that happens is I have to raise my prices I don't make any more money, and the only one making money is the government. Because businesses know there's only so much you can charge somebody before they're not going to use your product, especially with discretionary income. There's a lot of businesses out there that are based on discretionary income. If you had discretionary income, people are going to go to your place and, hey, listen, I want some nice wheels on my vehicle. I want some nice clothes. I want to go out to eat at this nice restaurant. But as things get more expensive, people stop doing that. And then if you have to pay people more to work there, and you're sitting there like, well, I want to make the same amount of money and I can't raise my prices or people won't come because they only have so much discretionary income, what do? They cut hours, they cut staff. And now people go to those places and are complaining, how come no one works? This place sucks. This place used to be so much better, the service here. I'm never coming back. All the while, everyone's getting screwed except the government, who just keeps putting money in their pocket because they are supposed to have a fiduciary duty for us, but all they want to do is buy off the next person so they can stay in power. Sorry about that rant.
No, it's perfect, because we talked about this. Politicians are really good at blaming other people, and that's what we talked about. We were joking about last week with the banking crisis video, whereas like, what do politicians do? First thing they do, they point to, oh, it must be speculators. The speculators are the problem. Easy, like, easy way to blame the finger to someone else and not point to them. But yeah, you bring up some good points. The livable wage thing, I think, is funny too, because it's like they make it sound like there shouldn't be jobs for people that, that don't necessarily need a quote unquote livable wage, but want to work. Like, I remember, for example, when I was like 15, 16, trying to apply to all these different jobs, I was just trying to make some extra money. I was applying to subways. I was applying to, pools to be a lifeguard. Like, I was applying to pretty much any place I can. I didn't need a livable wage at that point. I wanted to work so I could get some extra money for the summer. So
Yes.
And that, I think, the impact of the minimum wage, the biggest people it discriminates against, which is funny because the Democrats always pitch themselves as, oh, we're protecting the lower class with our policies, but this actually does the exact opposite, because what happens when you raise the minimum wage is you remove a good amount of the workforce that are entry-level workers. So think of it this way, for example. Let's say you have two people looking for a job. Let's say one person is, had a career in, crime, was selling drugs or whatever. They get out of jail. They're looking to get back on their feet. Chances are they're going to be starting at, a minimum wage job. Let's say $15 an hour. All of a sudden, that minimum wage gets raised to $20 an hour. You might have someone with a college degree, for example, that they don't want to work at $15 an hour. But then all of a sudden, the higher you raise that minimum wage, the more of the work pool you're attracting.
Yep.
So you're going to be able to hire that college graduate now is going to be applying for that same job, whereas they're going to be on paper more qualified than the person that's looking to get on their feet. So you're pretty much discriminating against the most destitute of society that are actually looking to build up. You're making it harder for them. You're making more competition for them to get back into the workforce and get back on their feet. And I think that's a story that gets completely missed when people talk about the minimum wage.
Well, another thing that I forgot, like I said, I went on a rant, so sometimes I forget things, so excuse me. But one of the other big things that no one ever thinks about, and it's funny because the people that are hurt the most by this are voting for this policy because they have been conditioned to believe it's good when it's bad. And one of those are retirees and people on fixed incomes. They don't have the capacity or the ability when things start rising because of these minimum wage increases. They don't have the capacity to adjust their income. You're on a fixed income, you're retired, you're only taking so much in. And now, because some politician doesn't want to be fiscally responsible, he comes up with a great idea that everyone gets paid more. And because everyone gets paid more, everything's going to go up. And these people now have to sit there, and you hear the stories of, these elderly people are eating one meal a day and they can't put the heat on and they can't have electricity and their bills are so expensive. And we sit here and like, why is that happening? Well, why it's happening is things are way too expensive. And their mentality is double down on the thing that caused the issue. Because unfortunately, not a lot of people have heard this side of the argument. Not a lot of people have stopped and thought about it. All they've ever heard is living wage, your employer is evil, and we're good. What you don't hear is your politicians aren't fighting for you. They're spending like crazy. And what they want to do is again, like I said, the reason why I brought up the water fee, the sewer fee, the garbage fee, I remember years ago, that was all in your tax bill. And now what they do is, to make it look like your tax bill isn't that high, they separate these fees out. Oh, it's not a tax, it's a fee. Right? So, and again, so now what happens is you keep raising things, and then they're like, oh, why do the poor keep getting poorer? Why do the people in fixed income, why are they eating less? Why don't they have heat? And then what we do is, we have these programs we got to fund. And now guess what? The government needs more money. It's just this cycle we're on, and we need to break it. Like, we need people with level heads to sit down. And I did some research because I heard in the past that something that what you said, I heard in the past that Australia has like a 2-tiered minimum wage thing. And, I don't know if people would go for it. But again, if you were a teenager looking for a job to gain experience, I think there should be a different wage, and it would help companies to offset the costs of people who are older. Now, I don't know if that's 21 or 25 or 20, whatever the age is where there might be a tiered minimum wage. That might be a good idea. Let's have that discussion, right? But it just can't be. Everything's getting more expensive, so your evil employer has to pay you more money. Because again, I was telling some people about this today. I was at a standout in Dayton, and I was telling some people, and they go right to, which everyone does, why not $50? Why not $100 minimum wage, right? And then some other research I did is the average income in Somerset is $46,000. Now it's an average, right? The highs, the lows, whatever, right? Is $46,000. Well, at $20 an hour, that's $41,000 a year, minimum wage. And you have people right now in my town, and it's an average of 46. So then you're going to start having people, well, why go to college? Why do this? I'm going to be able to live. There's so many unintended consequences we have by just having stupid policies to help fund the government to be dumb, and to get people to vote for them that don't think about these long-term ramifications.
Yeah, and you talk to people too, and it's like there's also other implications too, where like a lot of times there's a trade-off between, like, I mean, when you're working at a minimum wage job, so it's not uncommon to be on, some sort of assistance as well, whether it's food stamps or something else, and those benefits go away when your wages go up. So it's kind of like it's kind of like, okay, I'm getting paid more, but now all of a sudden I am unqualified for this other thing. So it's like, I don't know. Sometimes it's not always a zero-sum game, but I think it all goes back to, it's you're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul in a lot of circumstances, but it all goes back to free markets work. Free markets are the most efficient. You look at any sort of country in history, and the countries that have started off as free markets work the most efficiently. And there are circumstances where we're not saying take away every single regulation out there, every single rule, but we're saying it in general. You look at countries that have been founded on free markets, like the United States, versus countries like China or North Korea, for example, that don't operate in free markets. And the more we get back to free markets, the more the higher standards of living we're going to have for everyone across the board.
Yeah. And really quick, one last point I think we can end this segment on, right, is this is something I always have to remind people. Your lowest paid people are always going to be the poor people. You can't raise the minimum wage enough to get people from being the poorest people. Right? And I don't think people understand that concept. I don't think they understand is you can raise the minimum wage to whatever it is. And if other businesses say, hey, listen, I want a qualified person that has a college degree, minimum wage went to 20, I was paying 20, but to not lose my guy, I'm going to pay them a little more. Minimum wage is always going to be your poorest people. And no matter what you raise that to, they're always going to be your poorest people. And until people get that concept, I don't think they're ever gonna realize that they have to do something different.
Yeah, and it's, you know, as you mentioned, and there's a substitute for everything, right? So
Yes.
if we all of a sudden jack up minimum wage on fast food companies, and doesn't make sense to buy fast food, what are we going to do? We're going to go buy the the food that comes out of the freezer section from who knows what country. So instead of that money going to your local economy, instead of it going to services, you're essentially buying the cheaper goods, which, you know, a lot of times come from other countries.
And I said that was the last thing, but I have one more thing, because like I said, there's so much. Oh, we could talk for hours on this, but I'm sure a lot of people don't want to. But one other thing I want people to think about, when their politicians start saying raise minimum wage and your employer's evil, just go back to all the taxes I talked about, okay, and sit there and realize that probably easily 30% to 40% of your check is eaten up in taxes and fees. At least the average person, probably 30-40%. If you had that 30 or 40% every month to do what you want to do, would your life be better? Would you need a minimum wage increase? No, you'd be like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. And I understand, you know, people are gonna say, well, you know, we're part of a society, you have to pay taxes. Yes, you have to pay taxes for what the government is supposed to do, not their wish list, not who they're going to pay off because they want to stay elected, not for all these special interest groups. No, listen, your job is to make sure we're safe and to, you know, provide nice roads and all those other things. But all these little special interest things, all these little puff things you want to do, we have to do better. We need politicians that are going to cut the budget, are going to say enough. The people's money should be the people's money. And then we don't have to make employers bear the brunt of government's inefficiency. So, you know, I think we beat this one to death, and I appreciate it. And we'll probably talk more about this, because right now this is in a committee. We'll see if it gets out of the committee. Hopefully it doesn't, right? But this is why we need to stay engaged. We need to stay involved. We need to pay attention, you know, because I'm gonna call my rep about this and be like, no, this is a big fat no for me. So.